Okay, we are now live on the Facebook. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. That is Keristen Holmes. I'm Walt Gray. On this side, we have David DeLuz, described as a progressive Democrat.
Okay. Liberal progressive, yeah.
Okay, we'll add to that title. Okay. Craig DeLuz, you're twin brothers.
Yes.
Living in Sacramento. Craig DeLuz is a conservative. Can I call you a Republican?
Yes, I'm a Republican.
I can. I wasn't sure if
Republican Party may be trying to leave me. But
okay, that's
I
good.
love it.
So we've been talking about this. We've all been sitting here watching virtually every word of this. David, as the Democrat, if I could start with this one, as the Democrat, have you seen any moments that you hoped your party would see today with this testimony where it's the, aha, gotcha?
No, there are no gotcha moments here. I think there were a few moments, a few flashes of Mueller acknowledging some facts and some lines of belief that the Democratic Party was holding on to about obstruction. But I think Mueller shot himself in the foot a couple of times, particularly in the very early part when they were able to catch him in some inconsistencies between his report and his testimony, and I think that set the stage. That one moment right there, I think, undercut the rest of Mueller's testimony, and it was blood in the water for the Republicans to continue to chop away at his credibility. And I think they did a relatively good job of making him seem ineffective and in some instances slow and sort of past his expiration.
Well, I thought it went far beyond that. I thought that what Republicans, their whole goal today was to, number one, bring out information that has largely been ignored by the mainstream media and hasn't been reported. They did that. So when the mainstream media covers this, they're either going to have to only talk about the Democrats, or if they talk about the Republicans, they're going to have to talk about some of the information, some of the accusations, and some of the evidence that was ignored in the report. Now, when I say that he did far worse, it was because their goal was also to show that the investigation was biased.
Yep.
The final report in the end was biased and left out key information that was exculpatory, but actually would have benefited the president. But also that the team itself was made up of individuals who were biased and thus proceeded in an investigation that was biased.
You know, a lot of people came into today's testimony looking at who's going to win.
Right.
Were there any winners today?
I believe the Republicans won only in that.
You agree?
Huh?
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the bar
The
was so high.
Republicans win, according to them.
Democrats wanted Mueller to say there's evidence of obstruction, and he went out of his way he walked right up to that line, but he never actually said it. That's what Democrats wanted. Republicans wanted to get out information showing that the report was that there was information in the report that was left out, that the report was biased, and that the investigation was biased, and I think they were successful in that.
There was Mr. Liu. He said you didn't indict because you can't correct, and Mueller said correct, and then he started talking about the 3 crimes of obstruction, 2 witness tampering. How was that not a win for Democrats? That would seem like that went close or on to the line.
In the very end, he said, "I do not agree with your characterization."
Okay.
But that was only on that one question. The other,
no, that was on whether or not he was going to call it obstruction.
They were not able to get him on that particular recitation of the facts. How that particular member of the committee.
But that was the best. That was the best one.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was the best one, because there was another question where he was asked, "Did you find evidence that the president sought or encouraged members of his administration not to cooperate with the investigation?" Mueller said, "Correct. That there is obstruction. That's obstruction. Period."
No,
and that's where
when they tried to say that constitutes obstruction, they said, "I disagree with that characterization."
But on that particular question,
it wasn't just that one. He said it multiple times.
No.
I disagree. You're talking the legalese of it, and we understand that.
That's all they left us with.
However, if you're a reasonable person and you're listening to the things that were said, that the president told Jeff Sessions this and Rod Rosenstein that, and made phone calls and pulls in James Comey and says, "Hey, you're not going to go after my guy." What is that What is that? If that's not,
Craig would say that's Clinton-esque. Craig would get Clinton-esque and say that depends on how you describe.
It's not officially obstruction, but it's right up to the door.
What I'll tell you is this: it is a demonstration of what I believe is President Trump's biggest weakness, and that is his lack of understanding and respect of the office and how what you say and what you do, the impact that it has. You don't just say anything, because whatever you say has meaning and has weight.
Ignorance is no excuse.
I'll give you that. Okay, so I think the president tweeted maybe 7 times before 15 minutes before we went on. Some are saying that those tweets show how anxious he really is. Before this, it was always like, oh, he's just annoyed, he's not nervous. What do you think about the president's reactions and his tweets before, up to, and during the testimony?
I didn't read any of his tweets, so I don't know exactly what he said. I just know that, once again, I think it's his desire to make his case, in quite frankly, whatever feeble attempt or way it is, it's his way to try and make his case directly to the people.
The biggest case here is obstruction. Regardless of the origin of the investigation, regardless of anything else, the president knows that he engaged in behavior that many in the court of law could describe and could prove to be obstruction. And that's what he's afraid of. That's why those tweets this morning, Trump follows a very time-worn playbook. Bluster, 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 and then when he gets scared, he gets defensive and he blusters more and ends up trying to negate and undercut whatever is about to happen. And that's what he did today.
And then playing right into his strategy. Democrats overreach, they misrepresent, and they demonize, and they use hyperbole, and they wind up looking stupid. As they did today.
Look at you, Mr. Mueller, with a 3 no's and a yes. I love that about you.
Senator, I have no recollection.
In our comments, I think Ron Ockley and President Trump also tweeted about the Clintons today. He said, so why didn't the highly conflicted Robert Mueller investigate how and why crooked Hillary Clinton deleted and acid watched 33,000 emails immediately after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress? I've seen those in the comments on my page, on a lot of people's pages. How does Hillary Clinton figure into this conversation at all today?
Well, only in that Robert Mueller was tasked with looking into Russian interference in our election, right? And the only area he seemed to really focus on were the email farms or the social media farms and President Trump. When there's clear evidence that there were Russians involved in the Hillary campaign. The Russian dossier, the very fact that it's a Russian dossier ought to tell you that there's a reason to investigate and look into that.
Okay, so why did they ignore those?
Well, because
I was not part of the investigation.
No,
that is outside of my purview.
Because they're all
Hillary
supporters.
Because
or Trump haters.
The evidence is right here in front of Mueller's face is the fact that the Republicans initiated the dossier, and they were
political enemies of the president.
They were the ones.
Political enemies of the president.
The Trump
That's all that really matters. I don't care
if it was green. The Trump campaign had way too many individuals in senior roles in the campaign that had ties to and were in direct communication with during the campaign with Russian operatives. That's why they were the focus of the investigation. Period. There's no evidence in that report. There's no evidence that's been presented. There has been no evidence that's been presented that there were Russian operatives in contact with the Clinton campaign. Period.
Nobody's been arrested or convicted of collusion.
So we're at the break right now. We're at the break. They've had 3+ hours of testimony.
Yeah.
What do you think is going on now? We have a new panel coming in, right? What do you? I'm sure the new panel has watched what just happened the last 3 hours. What would you imagine? What would you want your Democratic cohorts, David, to be doing? Are they scratching out lines they were going to ask? Are they going to come up with some new stuff? Because at this point in time, the needle to many has not moved.
I think they're going to have to redouble their efforts and look for a different tack to try to get Mueller to actually go a little bit beyond what he's done today, or a lot farther beyond what he's done today. But he needs to do, the Democrats need to get him to get to providing some characterization of Trump and the campaign and what they did in a way that's definitive and gives them that soundbite that they need in order to move forward. This guy is a seasoned pro. He's very savvy. He knows how to parry and get these guys off of him, and he can be
look confused.
Look confused.
I'll let you read that. Can you read that again?
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because I think Chris Wallace had said that this has been a disaster for the Democrats and a disaster for the reputation of Robert Mueller. Before going into the Russian investigation, he was lauded as this like incredible investigator. Like both sides were supportive of him. They thought he was brilliant. To see him today is a stark contrast to the man that I remember going into the Russian investigation with. Today, Robin, I'm going to give a shout out to Robin who commented on our Facebook page. Robin Campbell Williams Stillman said, it's becoming more and more clear that Mueller was a figurehead only. Is that true? Do you believe that?
I believe it to be true.
Okay.
But I also believe that a lot of what he didn't want to answer was him going out of his way to try and make sure he did what he said he was going to do, which was try and stick to the report. He didn't want to lay out. He does not want to be the one who makes the case for obstruction. Right. He's like, I want to lay out the evidence.
Right.
And a lot of the hemming and the hawing and the bumbling, for lack of a better term, was him, I believe, trying to stick to that.
And I'm telling you what's happening. This is pushing the Democrats to have to go all in on impeachment, because I don't think they're going to get him to say Trump engaged in obstruction. He's not going to say that. He is trying to preserve the opportunity for Congress to litigate the issue. He believes, this is my interpretation of why he's so steadfast in maintaining his distance from this. He is trying to preserve the opportunity for a fair impeachment hearing, because as soon as Mueller comes out and says, I believe Trump obstructed justice, when it goes into the impeachment phase, all that the Republicans are going to say is that Mueller muddied the waters and he made it impossible for President Trump to receive a fair consideration in an impeachment hearing. So that's why he's trying to not go there.
But an interesting question was raised. So why is it he can make a legal determination on collusion, but he can't make a legal determination on obstruction?
Because there is probably not the direct corroborative evidence about collusion, but there is evidence that he engaged in obstruction.
Okay, so we can agree that there's no collusion.
Cory Booker has already chimed in, having watched what was just going on, and probably echoes. And you're thinking impeachment would be, he says, the Mueller report, and he's watching. He's in Detroit right now, Cory Booker. It's enough of an indication that the House should begin impeachment proceedings against the president.
Yes.
So that may go to what you were just saying, as everybody is weighing in on what
That's
they've
the
seen.
only thing I agree with.
I will tell you right now, I don't believe that there's any sufficient evidence that has been put out there today that would corroborate that.
But
because
that evidence is
ultimately
in the
what it's going to come down
that
to
is
the American is Congress is eventually, the House is actually eventually going to look at, what do the American people feel? The American people are going to say, we're tired of this. Move forward with impeachment, and the American people are tired of it. It's going to be more of the same. In the end, it's the Democrats who are going to wind up paying.
Well, if you're going to do the impeachment, you better dang well know at the end of the line you're going to have something. Somebody's going to have something, because this is going to feed right into November 2020. And if this backfires on the Democrats, that's
the problem. The problem is that I think the Democrats in the House will get to something at impeachment in their deliberation on impeachment in the House. The problem is that they're going to come up against a stone wall in the Senate. The Senate will not vote to impeach. So then you're sitting there handing him a victory in October, November.
But you're going to have hearing after hearing where Republicans who had their little 5 minutes now to be able to present information and present evidence are now going to have extended periods of time to tell a narrative that the mainstream media has ignored, that the Democrats have ignored, and that Bob Mueller has ignored in his investigation.
But it doesn't ignore the fact
they're going to have an
that
opportunity
Trump
to tell that entire
obstructed
narrative.
the investigation. Remember, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. And that's what we have here. We have a situation where, regardless of what the origin of the investigation is, at the end of the day, Trump lied. Trump suborned perjury. Trump tried to fire the investigator.
Nope.
Yes, it's in the report. It's in the report.
I said that.
I think the big thing that a lot of people are going to take away from this, just like high-level information, when you tune in for maybe 5 minutes or so, and people probably didn't tune in for that long, there was a lot of hemming and hawing and a lot of, like you said, bumbling by Robert Mueller.
Right.
Well, he's 74 years old, and he's getting hit from everywhere. On page 19, column B3, you said this, and he's like, okay.
I'll give you that. But did that hurt his argument, or did that hurt his reputation completely as an investigator?
Oh, he took a huge.
Yeah, it's not a good look for him.
But
today.
Sometimes,
for different reasons.
Sometimes for people who are nonpartisan in a partisan environment, trying to maintain that level of objectivity makes you look incompetent, makes you look like you don't know what you're doing, because you're not ascribing to any one side or the other. Now, he was definitely trying to play four corners and delay answering questions. He was definitely trying to throw them off by throwing them back into the report.
He doesn't want to be there.
My testimony would have been, yeah, that's in the report. Oh, yeah, that's in the report. You know, if you really want to know the answer to that question, it's in the report.
Yeah.
Whoa. It's in the report.
I like how y'all went there again. What did Republicans want to hear out of today's testimony?
I don't think they really intended. What they wanted to hear was, did not want to hear Robert Mueller say there's evidence of obstruction and or collusion. They already knew collusion/conspiracy already been settled in most people's minds.
No collusion.
But what they also wanted to do was to show that it was biased, and the very fact that numerous times he contradicted himself, and where he contradicted himself was largely in either biasness in terms of his interpretation of stuff, information and witnesses that were not part of the report or even investigated. Those were the things. So I would largely say it was not about what they wanted to hear. It's what they didn't want to hear.
Okay.
And they didn't hear all this other stuff. So I think in the end, the Republicans got what they wanted, and they got what they could expect, the best they could expect.
And you also brought up a valid point, was the Republicans at least wanted to get these questions out that are not generally heard, as you said, in most news operations.
And for Democrats, the patient is still alive. The patient still has a pulse and a heartbeat on the table.
Wow.
I mean, but that's probably all
circling the drain.
right now. That's probably all they can say about what happened today. But it's just forcing them to push all in on impeachment.
It looks like we have a question from the audience.
Facebook viewer Anthony White wants to know, had President Obama done this, would this be accepted?
President
that is
Obama
an age-old question.
Well, first of all, the election, this investigation would be in the Senate Judiciary Committee, controlled by the Republicans, and I think Obama would be fried.
Really?
I think Obama would be fried. Yep.
I get the sense
there is a double standard. Period.
Why?
Come on, Walt.
Say it.
Why?
What is the double standard?
I think the Republicans would have only come after him if there was solid evidence.
No. They would have come after him.
Are you implying that there is racial bias?
Yes.
Okay. That's
I have to say. So the answer to the question is yes. He's implying that there's racial bias.
Because he's a black man being president. They had tried to stop him from day one. If they had a chance to get him in a Senate hearing to even get close to trying to impeach him, they would have done it.
We have another.
I don't believe.
You don't believe it? Okay. Another question.
We have another statement. We're going to turn this into a question from Elijah Cherkaz. He says, "Waste of time with this investigation."
Yeah.
Was this investigation a waste of time?
No. Not the part in terms of specifically looking at Russian involvement in our election. It's important to recognize, and by the way, foreign powers being involved in other nations' politics and elections is nothing new. And guess what? We do it too. So it happens. The question is, once you start getting into we need to understand and recognize it, and we need to fight. We do need to fight against it. I think the investigation into solely looking at the president, I believe, was a waste of time, because there were many other facets that needed to be looked into, and it clearly, as demonstrated by today's testimony, were not.
Was collusion and obstruction of justice. What can you simplify those terms? Because those are the terms that are being thrown around.
Collusion is not a legal term. Really, what they refer to, and that was one of the things in the testimony, it's tantamount to conspiracy. That is where basically two parties coming together in order to plan together to
do something that's knowingly illegal.
Exactly. And they said there was not sufficient evidence to prove that.
I'm listening to everything that's being said,
right.
and it talks about all the things the president did with phone calls and suggestions about, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. So what is the true definition of obstruction? If he did not obstruct, what was we call it? Strong arming, strong suggesting. What is the?
Right.
Remember,
what
it
is
is not. It is not. It is. You do not have to successfully complete the act.
That's what I'm
for
saying.
It to be.
It's
it's called suborning perjury. Suborning perjury is asking someone to lie.
One of the examples.
Hold on, Craig. Hold on. Suborning perjury is asking someone to lie.
But he didn't believe he was asking him to lie.
Yes, he did.
No, what he was saying was, look, if he came to him and said, man, look, he came to him and said, this guy should not be doing this, right?
And then he said, create a false record of this conversation.
No,
yes, he did.
He didn't
That's in the report. That is in the report.
There were two different interpretations of the conversation that they had.
That's in the, bro, that's in the report.
The council had one,
it's in
the
black
president
and
had
white
another.
This is Trump asked staff to falsify records connected to the special counsel's
That's his
investigation.
interpretation.
Mueller confirmed
that's based
Mueller
on.
You're saying that's Mueller's interpretation.
I'm saying that's Mueller's interpretation.
Okay, well that was in Mueller's report. I'm saying that the president did that.
But for example, they want to use as evidence.
Don McGahn.
No, they want to use as
meeting with Don
evidence.
McGahn, and then turned around and said, "I want you."
Are you going to stop
to
talking
record
for a second?
No, I'm not.
Let him finish the statement, then we'll let you go.
Okay.
He
Do we
told
have
Don
another
McGahn. He
question?
told Don McGahn to. He had a meeting with him, asked him to do something that was counter to what was legal, and then said, "I want you to record a record that this conversation basically never happened, that I didn't ask you to do it."
So that's not obstruction.
That's called obstruction.
I'm saying that's not what he did.
All right.
Wait. Just one
Hold on,
See, they want to use as evidence of obstruction the fact that he made public statements against Michael Cohen, right? So, in other words, anybody who made any public statement about Michael Cohen regarding Michael Cohen, then any politician who said anything is guilty of obstruction of justice.
When the president, who he used to work for and is his personal lawyer, says something, that is tantamount to obstruction.
Tantamount. Question from the floor, please.
All right. Would we be in a better place if there was an impeachment? Second part of that question, is Pence better or worse?
Wow, that's moving right along on that. Pence,
just real quick, now you remember back during the election, I said, worst case scenario, or your best, Trump gets impeached and we get President Pence. No. Because I happen to like Vice President Pence more. I don't
hear that often.
But you remember I said that,
do remember you saying that. Yes.
That's not what I've always heard people say either.
Pence will end up being disqualified, and guess who you'll have as president? Nancy Pelosi.
Who's disqualified how?
Boom. He will
disqualified how?
He will end up being disqualified.
I would like for you to.
What legal proceedings
tell
are
us
you
what you
referring
know.
What is
Look, I just think.
Wow, we're already to Nancy Pelosi. Pence is already
Pence has been able to extricate himself from this particular thing, but
most everything.
But I firmly believe that there's going to be something that's going to come up in an impeachment that's going to end up making him disqualified.
Okay,
I believe that, especially when you're talking
disqualified. Give me some legal. What do you mean disqualified? You mean he's going to get impeached too?
Take my word. Take my word.
You mean he's going to get impeached too?
Very well may.
I think disqualified
You
is
need
the
to
word
stop reading Occupy Democrats.
No, disqualified is the word we're going to go with until a better word.
President.
We had a couple of viewers that was like,
sorry, go
we had
ahead.
a couple of viewers that were like, it'll be nice if y'all stop talking over each other. So be nice to our viewers.
All right.
Y'all play
I
nice.
apologize.
All right, Chloe Massey wants to know what makes Trump above the law for his corruption.
What makes Trump above the law for his corruption? David?
The fact that he's still president?
Okay, so he's using the office of the presidency
Yes.
to avoid.
Yes.
No?
That is a loaded question, which makes an assumption which has neither been proven nor is true.
All right, so let's go back to Mr. Lou's exchange with Mueller. You didn't indict because you can't, correct? Mueller, that was a win for Democrats, right?
He is legally barred from indicting the president. That is correct.
Yep.
Okay. Why is he legally barred from indicting the president?
Because that is the opinion of the Office of the Legal Counsel that he is unable to
While he's in
office to legally bring an indictment against the sitting president. Period.
Are we setting that up for a later?
Yeah.
Yes, that's why he's preserving evidence for some later proceeding, whether it's impeachment or whether it's to prosecute him once he's out of office.
Yes, Mueller has said that the president could be charged once he leaves office.
Yes.
And so it's still in play.
If he were consistent and unbiased, he would have made the same exact determination in terms of quote unquote laying out the facts for both collusion or conspiracy and for obstruction, but he didn't do that. You see what I'm saying? That's why I'm like. That's why I don't believe that that's where he was going on obstruction.
Okay. All right. That's all good stuff. So, what can we look forward to once they come back in for the next 2 hours? David, you suggested a different plan of attack. They've already had the opportunity to see what works, what doesn't work. What would you ask if you were on the panel? Coming up.
Well, I would still want to know what his opinion of Bob Barr's cover memo was about the report. I think that's a key question because I don't think William Barr, I think that's a key question. Is there something about his characterization that is counter to what was his intent in producing and authoring the report that he did? That will lead us down the road to maybe having a conversation about whether or not there was obstruction, collusion, et cetera, and getting some additional information there. But I don't think the Democrats have much of a plan or any other option other than to dig in deeper, ask him more pointed questions, and try to get him to comment beyond just what the report.
Keep in mind that this is the Intelligence Committee, which means there's got to be more focus on the collusion end than on the obstruction end. So if we're talking about that, now we're talking about what role do the Russians play? What are the sort of connections that Democrats need to be? If Democrats need to be asking more about the meetings and things along those lines. Republicans will be focusing once again on going back to the dossier, going back to a lot of the information on collusion in connection with Russians. Why they weren't even investigated. So I think you're going to see more of a discussion towards collusion than obstruction.
Okay, so what are the biggest takeaways today for the Republicans? What were that was us. Because they did a lot of cheering. While we watched them watch the testimony, there was a lot of cheers from you guys. What were you happiest with today?
Mueller never said that this was evidence of obstruction. He never said it. They tried to get him to say it in his own words. He never said it. Republicans also got a chance to put out a lot of information that the mainstream media has ignored, and now they're going to have to cover some of that evidence, some of that information.
Now, just to be clear, I was not cheering for the Republicans.
We understand that.
What I was saying, what I was saying was, it was a whiff fest. Okay. I mean, literally, they were
close,
going right up to the edge,
right up
and
to
then
it.
he turned to the right or turned to the left, and wouldn't actually cross the threshold in actually giving his opinion on the findings of the report. But
did they not know that going in?
They should have.
They should have performed or prepared better to deal with, because when you look back at all of his testimony that he's ever done since 2001, literally he's pretty much a straight shooter, is going to stick to the facts, the reports. He's not going to opine very, very much. And so I commented on the ABC 10 feed that the Democrats should have prepared better. I mean, they prepared all this time, and this is all they're getting. This is crazy.
So, to wrap this up, we had the Mueller investigation report which came out, and we all hoped one way or another something would be satisfied. We're now through 3 hours of testimony, and everybody is still they've seen different things. Do you imagine after today that the headline at CNN is probably going to be completely different than the headline at Fox? What would we have accomplished when still everybody is dug into their own position?
I think the only thing you're going to see different is the conversation about collusion is going to fall by the wayside. I think it's going to be all obstruction all the time.
Okay.
All right.
I'll take
You
that.
good?
I'm good, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with
I'm
that.
good because that's how a lot of Democrats
Send it.
are feeling right now. So thank you guys so much for watching.
Continue to comment.
If you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. We'll get some answers for you in the comments. And we see you after another, 2 hours of testimony?
We'll be hanging out watching just
Oh, yeah.
like you. Thanks for joining us on the Facebook.
Facebook
All right.
Live.